All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. It's Matt Lost special time, but I got to say right away, if you're not on YouTube, check it out. Matt is in the festive spirit. Check out that tree. Is that real?
It's real. It's real. My kids demand real trees. So, yeah, it's like I'm in Santa's grotto, isn't it?
Yeah, this is impressive. We have a real tree as well, but it's very easy to get. I mean, are you guys going to like the magical forest and cutting it down, or is it?
No, we don't have that, unfortunately. I just have to walk around the corner and get it from the pub, basically.
From the pub?
Some of the pubs sell them here, so I get mine from the local pub and then walk back with it, trying not to collapse. Yeah.
I was gonna say, how long does that trip take?
Well, it should take 10 minutes, and it probably takes half an hour these days for me.
Gotta just have a pint while you're there, check in. No, that's good.
Exactly.
It's very festive, Matt. I love it. So again, just another great reason to go check out YouTube. This is a Discord exclusive mailbag with Matt. So if you want to know how to get in on the action, got to go join our Discord. All right. Links in the description, links on the socials. Check it out. It's a good time in there. And so these questions mainly about Chelsea, but also some kind of just about you, Matt, because we all know you're not a Chelsea fan. That might surprise some people. So there's some Villa things, but also just some general questions as well, which would be good. The first one, Canyon, I thought we'd lead easy, says, does Matt agree that the Carabao Cup is bigger tournament than the Champions League?
Well, it certainly is this season, isn't it? It certainly is this season. Hey, look, I've always liked the Carabao Cup. I promise you, I've always liked it. I think it's a
We
good
can call it the
competition.
League Cup, right?
Yeah, the League Cup. I think I always think it's exciting. I actually prefer the format than the FA Cup because you don't have the replays. You go straight to penalties. It feels modern. It feels good. I've never, ever denigrated it. I've always thought it's and look at the winners in the past few years. Man City 4 times, Man United, Liverpool. You know, the big teams take it seriously no matter what people try and tell you.
Isn't it known as the three-handled trophy?
Yeah, there is that. I don't know if it still is, actually. It always used to be the three-handled trophy. I need to Google image it now because I've got a feeling it's not anymore. It used to be. When Leicester won it years ago, it was.
Right. I remember hearing that, but yeah. I don't know. It looks like it might have modernized.
Yeah, I think it's probably modernized. But look, it's a good trophy. There's nothing wrong with it. And for sure, for Chelsea this season, it's much bigger than the Champions League. And it would have been for Newcastle, let's add as well, given what happened to them.
Yeah. What about you? Just kind of weekly in the life. Like we imagine you're like a super agent, always on the phone, going to fancy restaurants, having these down low meetings. But outside of transfer window nonsense, craziness.
Yes.
Is it like kind of normal work hours? Are you around the clock? What's the general overview for you?
Yeah, see, the nature of my job is that there isn't really a general. The two things that I would always generally do is pretty much Cobham most Fridays for the manager press conference. I'd quite like to talk about this because I see a lot of comments on Twitter about these press conferences. So the press conference is split into 2 sections. Pochettino will come in at 1:00. The first 20 minutes is cameras only. So that is all the Sky broadcasters, all the people who pay for the rights, all the rights holders and radio and TV. And they ask all the questions. And that is what you see on the club's YouTube channel. That is what you see feed immediately out into Twitter. After 20 minutes, the cameras have to shut off. And it used to only be newspapers, but that's quite an old-fashioned thing now. What's called the written press now that's not in front of the camera, then get their 20 minutes. And that's the stuff that comes out either late at night or the next morning. Now, why I'm interested to talk about that is I often see a lot of criticism during the live part of the press conference over the questions. And I always want to scream that that's the right holders and that's the broadcasters. And I also think you have to give them a little bit of a pass because these people, it's their job to find sound bites that look good on screen. And that is a very different job from actually getting insight. because insight doesn't always work on screen. It can come across very boring and very dry. So those guys are after sound bites and maybe something funny and a laugh and a smile, because that's just what looks nice on screen. And then we've got the benefit of not having the manager, and we don't have to worry about what it looks on screen. We can pick out the most interesting bits and not worry about the more dry bits. So that's how the press conference works. And that is a big part of my week. There'll be a game at the weekend, at least one, if not two. This year's really weird for me because I'm so used to having the rhythm of a midweek Champions League as well. I'm not rubbing it in because usually if Chelsea aren't there, Tottenham are there, who I cover too, and neither of them are in Europe. So the rhythm of my week has been slightly slower this season, but it's given me a lot more chance to do interviews, get out and see people, try not to just sit at home on the phone. I really try to get out and see people when I can rather than just rely on the phone. So that's probably as good as I can say, because the nature of my job is there just isn't a routine.
Oh, I can imagine, right? Like, and you're always working on everyone else's schedule, right? Whether it's your
exactly
your boss's schedule or everyone you're hitting up for information. So, yeah, that's always the tough thing. And I'm sure you have to have like articles like or like started maybe, or like back up in case something falls through. Like, I imagine that it's much more complex than just sit down, type your X amount of words, and then be done with it for the day.
Well, it used. I mean, I kind of missed it slightly, but back in the day with journalism, that's how it was, because the deadline was only sort of 10 o'clock at night. But 24-hour rolling news these days, you can't work like that anymore. So it's we had to reschedule this because I got a phone call and had to write something, because these days you're just not really allowed to sit and wait for something and wait to write it later. So yeah, it can be. Look, it's good because in a way you can plan your own diary and you're not set to somebody else's diary. But as you say, you're always beholden to the news cycle and people's time zones and stuff like that.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, appreciate that. And, I'm sure we can do more on that later, but we do have Chelsea questions. So we want to get through these. So the first ones are kind of like transfer themed, right? So these all kind of play together. So we'll see how we do this. But Sachet says, how much power does Poch have or will have in the transfer window moving forward? We touched on that a little bit last time. And then Blue London 1905 says, does the board / ownership think their transfer policy was too rigid with the signing of young players? How do you kind of balance these two things? Like, I'll throw both out and let you kind of connect them or disconnect them.
Yeah. So the first one, it kind of depends who you listen to. I've got to be honest. There's two very different schools of thought on this. My personal view from my contacts is I think Poch will have a bit more of a say than maybe people at Chelsea will let on. I think the sporting directors will still drive it. I think Badad Bali particularly be involved. I don't think Todd Bowley gets involved in transfers too much these days. I think he had his fingers burned and he's actually been concentrating on his other businesses a lot more than he was this time last year. He's not as present as he was. So I think the sporting directors and Badad Bali will drive it. But I think Pochettino will have more of a say than maybe people will be prepared or want to say. I think he will be very clear in what he feels he wants and needs, very clear in what he feels should and shouldn't happen. All I would say, though, against that, is that Pochettino, knowing him so well, he never demands a player. He's not a Mourinho or a Conte and will demand a player. He will give his thoughts, he will give his opinions, and then he accepts that after that, it's not his job to deliver or not to deliver, and he will work along that. He won't. It's just not in his nature to demand a certain player or a certain position. He will literally make recommendations. But I do think he'll have a bigger say than the summer because, quite frankly, he didn't really have a say in the summer. He came in quite late of his own choice, and then he decided to let them get on with their project because it was too far down the line. He felt at that point in the summer to start sort of putting spanners in the works or trying to change things. So he very much let them get on with it in the summer. So it will be different from the summer. And then the second question, just remind me of it, sorry.
The rigid transfer policy of young players.
Yes. Yeah. So this isn't my opinion, but it's the opinion, I think, of the people I talk to in the club. I think they very much stick to it. I think they believe in it still. But what I think they also believe it was a policy for the summer, for the squad overhaul, and that they've done it. And where they will still look to sign what they call elite talent, and we can all debate what constitutes elite and what isn't elite, but what they believe is elite talent, they will still try to do that, and they will still hand out these very long contracts despite the change in the loophole. However, I do think now there's more flexibility because they've gone through that squad overhaul. They wanted to bring the profile of the squad right down in age. They wanted to bring the profile of the squad right down in wages structure. And now they've gone through that. So whereas I still think the overall aim is to continue down that path, I think there's more flexibility now because they've been through the overhaul. That's what I'm led to believe anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, interesting. Doubling down. Temple Dweller had a follow-up on this. This says, is there anyone at the club pushing for no transfers this January? There's a lot to be said for letting the squad and club have a quiet window, which we have not had under the new owners, to let them settle in with each other without fear of another influx. If anything, a couple departures are the only thing he would personally find palatable.
I agree with this. That you'd certainly find me championing this. One of my most respected contacts has always said to me, there's never a good transfer in January. There's only bad transfers in January. And I agree with that. I really do agree with that. I'm sure everyone can find an exception to the rule because there's an exception to every rule. But I believe that there is a strong argument not to do anything, but I don't think that will happen. Mm-hmm. I think because of the injuries and because of some of the holes in the squad, they'll be keen to try and fix things, to try and push the season as far as they can. Albeit, it's not a strict one in, one out, but I know there's a very firm desire for the squad not to get any bigger. So anything that comes in will have to be offset by outgoings. I think it's 2 or 3, but I have said that before with Chelsea, and then they've gone and done crazy things. So I'm reluctant to hold too much faith to that. But again, I'm being told again 2 or 3. But I agree with that question that personally, they're not going to win. They could win the Carabao Cup. They're not going to do much in the league this season. If they can win the Carabao Cup, they can do it with the squad they've got, in my view. I would like to see them try and play it out and see where they are at the end of the season and take a longer term view on it. We're starting to hear little things about, and Nkunku's like a new signing, Lavia will be like a new signing, which always makes you think, okay, maybe they're going to be reactive rather than proactive in the market. And by that, I mean, they will move if and when there's an injury or something forces them, rather than starting the market, chasing something immediately. I think that's how they approach this market. But I would love them to not sign anyone, but I would be absolutely staggered if they didn't sign anyone.
Yeah. I mean, especially after last January. I mean, holy smokes.
Well, last January was a disaster. Last January ruined the season. Last January was a full-on disaster. In the long term, it might work out. Those players might work out, but last January completely wrecked the second half of the season. They cannot go anywhere near that route again.
I just can't imagine being Graham Potter or even someone in operations there being like, I'm sorry, how many people? Another person's coming. Okay. Yeah. So we're out of lockers. We're over capacity. 2 more people are coming. Gotcha. Okay. Graham, when's the last time you managed 38 players when you weren't in academy football? Jeez.
I mean, astonishing.
All right. Donovan says, if Chelsea bring in a striker over the transfer window, do you see them parting ways with Nico, or would this move happen too soon?
No chance parting ways with Nico. No chance. I know he divides opinion massively, but I think they're genuinely quite happy with Nico. He's a funny player because you can look at him and really wonder about him. And yet, if you break it down to numbers, in terms of first seasons in the Premier League at his age, he's stacking up pretty well. It's a difficult one, but there's no way they're going to give up on Nico Jackson at the moment. So a new striker could come in, or Nkunku could come in and go into the striker's position and Nico drops the bench. But Nico's age and profile means that he is a long-term project player. He's not going to go out on loan. He's not going to get sold. If someone comes in, it will be as part of his development, and he will be allowed to develop at a slower rate. I think part of the struggle probably around Nico is that he's had to play so much as the main striker because of Nkunku's injury and because of the slightly imbalanced squad, in my view, that's been slightly unfair on him at his age and his profile. I mean, I said when they signed him, I didn't feel that this was a guy you could rely on as a top Premier League club. And I still feel that. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to him, because I actually think he's got a lot of talent. But to rely on him as a number one striker at a top Premier League club, when you think about his background, and it hit home to me when I interviewed him, and, you know, it's only 6 years ago, the lad couldn't afford a pair of football boots. I mean, his rise from where he was is absolutely staggering. So it's no surprise that he's raw and that he's going to need quite a lot of work. But there is ingredients there, and they're not, long and short of it is they're not going to give up on Nico Jackson, no.
Yeah, I mean, he is leading goal scorer and leading caution gatherer. But, you know, like
he's
you
more
said,
he's more goals than bookings, though, now. It's swinging in the right direction now.
love to see it. All right, we're going to take our first ad break. When we get back, more on one Conor Gallagher and so much more. Thank you to sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, Chess fans, we're back with another partnership through the end of the year. We got NordVPN coming at you to make sure you are safe and you're able to watch Chelsea no matter where you are traveling during the holiday season. A lot of you know I just got back from Costa Rica from Thanksgiving with the family, and guess what? I used a VPN to watch Chelsea while I was traveling. I was able to watch it on Peacock, no problems at all. So if you're traveling out of the country this holiday season, make sure to get NordVPN so you don't miss when we play Wolves on the 24th, when we play again after Boxing Day, and again before the end of the year. There are tons of matches coming up. You don't want to miss a single one. The other thing to think about, are you want to watch match of the day? Are you trying to see the BBC coverage, Sky coverage? You can do it with over 5,000 servers from NordVPN. So if you go to nordvpn.com/London is blue, you're going to go ahead and pick the plan that's right for you. And we're going to give you 4 extra months for being a fan of London is Blue. That's right. You get an extra 4 months hanging out with us. We absolutely appreciate you checking them out. Now, if you aren't using a VPN, hey, I hate to break it to you, you're the only one. Not only do they keep you secure and all your information is encrypted, no more IP address tracking. The other thing is they've doubled down and they've added threat protection feature. So say goodbye to intrusive website ads, malware. Even if you download an infected file, threat protection kicks in and deletes it before it makes a mess of your computer. Go to nordvpn.com/London is blue. Try it. Huge holiday deal. There's no risk. You get a 30-day money-back guarantee with NordVPN. That's how much they believe in the product. Support our sponsor, nordvpn.com/London is blue. Go watch match today. Go watch Chelsea if you're traveling. Never going to have to worry about being tracked on the internet again. Link in the description. You know what to do. All right, Matt, the only Christmas present we need from you is a Conor Gallagher extension. So RD21212 says if Chelsea began to entertain offers for Gallagher, would this be to raise funds to bring in an experienced midfielder or to change the dynamic of the midfield? And T. Clote says the Conor contract situation is coming to a head. Last we heard, there wasn't a formal extension negotiations transpiring. Where do things stand now? What's up with Conor?
So, from Conor Gallagher's side, nothing has really changed. He's relaxed. He's very happy. He wants to stay at Chelsea. He's playing well. He's happy with his role. I think he's fine. And that's not fine in a way of, oh, fine, I want to see my contract run out. But he's not knocking on anyone's door saying, you've got to sort this out tomorrow. He's playing regularly. He's playing really well, I think. I mean, he was sensational against Newcastle in the Carabao Cup. And so from his point of view, all's good. Now, the club are being really coy on this, and contacts and sources are being really coy on this. But just trying to join some dots of conversations I've had, this is how I see the situation. I don't think Conor Gallagher is up for sale in January. I think at one stage in the summer he was up for sale. So I think there's a difference there. I think because of his contract, there are probably figures where the club feel they would have to look at it. But I don't think that they're actively going out looking for those figures. Now, I might sound like I'm sort of fluffing here and I'm not really being very clear, but I do think there's a distinction to be made by a player not being up for sale, but there are figures whereby a conversation would take place. I would prefer them to just say he's not going anywhere in January no matter what. I think that's what they should do. I really do. He's playing too well. He's been key to Pochettino. Pochettino's made it clear he wants to stay. But the club are looking at it from a more business aspect, and should a 50, a 60 million bid come, it will certainly get discussed. That's not to say they are putting the name around saying this player is available for 50, 60 million. And those two things are different. And that does make it different from the summer, because I am told by, the club won't confirm this, but I'm told by exceptional sources that his name was on a list that was circulated round to clubs in the summer. That isn't happening now, but it doesn't mean he can't or won't go, depending on if someone comes in with a huge, well, it's not a huge bid, but a big bid for someone in his contract length. But my view is you'll still get really good money for him if you have to sell him with 12 months. I think if he gets to 12 months, the fan base would be more understanding that a decision has to be made. I don't think anyone would expect them to just let him walk away for free if they can't agree a contract with him. I think they should say he has done fantastically. He will not go anywhere in January, and we will spend from now until the summer doing our utmost to get him on a new contract. If we cannot do that, the situation will change. That's what I would like them to say. At the moment, they will not say that.
So would fans be reading into it too much if the concern isn't that Connor's pushing to renew? I'm confused because 18 months is danger zone in contract negotiations. You're very quickly running out of time until your hand is forced, like you said, this summer. So do you even know if they've even talked about contract negotiations?
Connor doesn't need to do anything. Connor's in a great position, and that doesn't mean he's in a great position because he's looking to leave Chelsea. But Connor, if I was Connor, I wouldn't do anything. It would make no sense for him to go knocking on the door. It's for Chelsea to sort out his contract. This is part of my frustration with the whole situation. Again, Chelsea won't confirm this, but from very good sources, I'm told very little work has been made from the Chelsea end in terms of offering him a contract, past very initial discussions when the figures were quite a long way off what Connor and his agent would have expected for a player of his pedigree. And of course, as he captains the team and as he plays well in terms of his contract worth, in actual fact, it's probably going northwards rather than southwards. So, but I don't believe that the club are doing enough to try and tie him down. Like I said, they should not make him for sale in January and spend the next 6 months banging down his door, trying to get him secure on a contract. And also, I'm afraid he is now. He's captained the club. He's played, before the Newcastle Carabao Cup game, he played the second most outfield minutes after Disasi. I don't know whether now he's the most outfield minutes because Disasi went off with some time to go. But he's the leading, if not the second leading outfield player for minutes. His stats in Europe in terms of ball recoveries are among the top. I mean, in today's market, he is a £150,000 a week footballer. He is. And Chelsea are going to have to reflect that. Chelsea are going to have to offer him over £100,000 a week to keep him. And obviously, I think they didn't think they were going to have to do that properly this time last year. But that's what he is. And if he were to move, he would be moving on to a contract that was around £150,000 a week. That is his profile. He's an England international too. So, yeah, it's just a situation I'd like them to sort out. And it worries me that they don't seem to be desperately trying to do anything. And it worries me that it highlights a slight disconnect between the business and the manager. I can't think of another top Premier League manager who would have a situation whereby they're making a player captain and playing them as much as they're playing him. And against his will, basically, the club could still sell them in January, even with 18 months on the contract. It wouldn't happen to Pep Guardiola. It wouldn't happen to Jurgen Klopp. It wouldn't happen to Mikel Arteta. It wouldn't happen to Unai Emery. He's in charge of everything. They should be taking the lead. They should let Pochettino take the lead through his actions on this.
So Thiago Silva is the minutes leader for the Premier League with 1440. Connor's at 1327. But when you go to all competitions, to your point, Disasi's at 1673 and Connor's at 1613.
There you go.
60 minutes difference between those two in all competitions. And they're not far off Sanchez, who has 1703 is in all minutes played. Yeah, look, I think if he fits their recruiting profile, right? Like checks all the boxes of a player that they would be recruiting from a Crystal
We've
Palace,
talked about
Brighton,
this
whoever.
before, haven't we? We joked if he
Exactly.
played for Brighton, they'd be trying to buy him.
Exactly. So I get the no fee and it's all pure profit, but it would be a tough step back. Stutz says, are Chelsea actually looking into Aaron Ramsdale?
Not at the moment, no.
Definitely not anymore. What's up, George?
Well, exactly. I mean, exactly. I to that point, I like the look of this goalkeeper. You'd know a lot more about him than me, George Petrovic. But I like it. I like the look of him, and they've got faith in him. Ben Roberts really pushed for him. The recruitment team really like him. And no, even before sort of the Newcastle game and the last two games, I don't think there was any sort of anybody really seriously looking at Aaron Ramsdale. And I think given the Carabao Cup game and the Sheffield United game, although he didn't really have to do anything, but he looked comfortable still. He still, even though it was an easy afternoon for him, I just liked the fact he looked confident and easy and comfortable. No, basically no. And I think this young lad's going to get a real good crack of the whip now. And it'd be very interesting if he can actually hold on to that number one spot, because he's very, very highly rated there.
I mean, first of all, Petrovic came in under the bright lights of the Premier League. Thank gosh he had an easier night. But like, look, many men have crumbled under just putting on the shirt and walking out there and doing the job. Then he got into the cup competition, more competitive, Newcastle, penalty shootout, and was the hero. And he was not on cloud nine. He was calm and collected. He's like, hey, I just went out and did my job. Like, I'm going to go to bed and show up and do it tomorrow. Like, this is what I do. And I think kind of that mentality is what got me interested. But before this, I would have been all in for like a Ramsdale loan, even though it wouldn't have been ideal for Chelsea, but he would have gotten minutes and things like that, just because I think it would have been an instant win. But now we're in a situation where these two goalkeepers are going to compete every single day to be the number one or take it because it's up for grabs. We're in a good position as far as competing for places now.
They are. I just think they've got to get out this culture of trying to solve injuries with signings and trying to solve everything with signings. Trust some of the people in the building. And this lad's earned a bit of trust now. But he's got people who believe in him in the building. And to be honest, even weeks ago, contacts were very, very clear that Ramsdale wasn't someone they were even thinking about for this January. So I don't see it at all, no.
Okay. What about Carney Chukwuemeka? It seems like he can't get healthy. We thought he was going to return late fall, and now he's nowhere to be seen again. Do you have any update on his injury or where he's at?
I'm afraid I don't. I'm afraid he keeps dropping down. He keeps turning up on my list of things I need to find out about, and then other things happen, and he drops down my list a little bit again. So do try and remind me closer to our next one, and I'll get you an update.
Man,
but no, but it doesn't seem to be. Some players, you hear a bit of a running commentary on their progress, and you hear that you kind of know where they are in the progress. There's not been any of that around Carney.
That's the concern. Yeah. It's gone quiet. Like, that's not what you want, especially with Child's new.
Said last week, Pochettino was talking about the way the season had gone last Friday, and he was just getting into a bit of a discussion with journalists rather than sort of answering questions. And he just said, and do any of you remember who scored the second goal against West Ham? And we actually all looked at each other, and it took a good couple of minutes. Someone suddenly said, Carney. And yeah, exactly, Carney. We haven't seen him since. But no, apologies. That try and remind me nearer the next one, and I'll get you a question or an update if one hasn't already come out on Carney. But it has gone very quiet on Carney.
Yeah, I mean, he started the season off so well, but I think when the grand scheme of things, there's just so many other things closer to the pitch, which is why the focus has been there, understandably. But the fans still want to know what's up with Carnes, unfortunately. Yeah. Megan, love this one from Megan, asks, has there been any updates to the women's manager search?
Great question. I think Emma Hayes will have a very big say in that, particularly if Chelsea is sensible. I heard one name rumoured, who I'm not really allowed to say on here, I'm afraid. So I think feelers are going out because I tend not to hear rumours, particularly on the women's side, which I will admit I don't cover very closely. So the fact I heard a rumour would suggest to me some feelers are going out a little bit, but I do think Emma will play a massive part in that, and quite rightly. They'd be crazy not to try and use Emma's knowledge on that. But yes, I can't say the name I heard. Sorry.
All good. It's been an interesting season for them. I will say that it has been, and just kind of weird knowing that your, legendary managers leaving.
Yeah, I think it will be. I don't mean a tough season as in some sort of drop off or fall off. I just think it will be a tough emotional season for that team and that squad. And I can understand there might be some strange results because I think it's going to be slightly odd for everybody involved.
All right, let's see. Next one are about fullbacks. Chris L says, what is the plan for fullbacks over the next few months? Is Chilwell anywhere close to returning? Are they going to look at transfer loan options or bring in Isha Samuel-Smith or maybe Josh Ekampong from the academy? And Matt Fitz doubles down, said, what are the odds we somehow get Lewis Hall back after the season?
Right, so that one, virtually no chance. I put a story out this week. It's not appearance related. It's performance related, and that performance relates to Newcastle. And I don't quite know exactly what that performance is. There's some rumours that it's just that they don't have to get relegated, some that they don't have to finish below Chelsea. But I'm told in every single bit but name, it was a permanent deal, and that there's like a 1% chance of that being able to fall apart. So I would write that one off. I would forget that one and write it off as done. Fullbacks is interesting. Chilwell is on his way back. Chilwell, I think they'll probably be careful and wait till the new year, but Chilwell's not a million miles away. He's making good progress from what I understand. I think he'll be back. But obviously you can't count on any of the fullbacks' fitness. Let's face it, Cucurella's now out for a long time. Reece is still waiting for another assessment. I think he's desperately trying to avoid surgery if he can, but whether he can or not, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they signed someone who can play at left back in January. I think, I say left back, I mean fullback, whether it be right or left. I wouldn't be surprised if they signed someone who could play at fullback in January. Ian Maatson, I think they will look to sell. And again, Pochettino hasn't really played him at fullback, but he's obviously, before this season, we all thought he was a fullback. I wouldn't be surprised at all if, I've been writing quite carefully that ideally they'd look at a striker, and I've been writing defender because I think with the nature of the injuries and the fact, like I said, they're going to probably have to be reactive rather than proactive in this January window. What might have started out as maybe a thought of getting a centre-back might develop into actually getting some sort of full-back in, or someone certainly who can play full-back. I'm not saying definitively, because I think that's why I've been careful to write defender rather than specifying, but it wouldn't surprise me if they got some sort of full-back in January.
Which is kind of crazy because we've talked about how, remember when we had like Alonso, Chilwell,
Livramento, are we going back that far?
Well, I just remember we always like had too many left backs and like left wing backs for the longest time, right? And then you had Chilwell, and then Cucurella, and obviously Lewis Hall was playing there, and now,
I mean, look, given the nature
had
of the
to slide.
Yeah. Given the nature of the squad, I think they have in numbers in the squad got enough fullbacks, but they're just all so injury prone. I think Colwill, I think Pochettino, I know it's caused debate. I think Pochettino quite likes him there. So I think if they did bring in someone to play at fullback, it'd more likely be to help out Gusto on the right side, because Reece is going to be a long-term injury, whether it's surgery or not surgery. So because I think Colwill does seem slightly more comfortable out on the left than Disasi does on the right when he has to play there. And Chilwell is on his way back. So But I think if you looked at the squad, I wouldn't have said they left themselves short on fullbacks. It's just they're so injury prone at fullback. That's the problem.
Yes, it's 100% the problem. All right, we're going to take our last break. When we get back, we're going to talk about midfielders and Enzo. And again, we still have non-Chelsea questions. So thank you to sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, a little bit of a pivot here. M. Dempsey says, what's the plan or capacity from an availability standpoint to keep from overplaying primary midfielders like Gallagher, Enzo, and Caicedo? And now we got an update on Enzo, who got subbed off early yesterday, that he has been carrying a knock or a strain. It says
this contradicts all I would say is that contradicts what Chelsea and Pochettino said last night. They were very much putting it down to a stomach illness. So I'm a bit, because I don't know the source, I don't actually know who that source is, I'm a bit wary just to take that as definitive. I think Pochettino will probably issue an update on Friday, but certainly on Tuesday night, the club and Pochettino were very definitive that his reason for coming out was a stomach illness that he'd been carrying going into the game, that a couple of players had been carrying, actually. So it is, I'd just be a little bit wary of that until we get another update on that.
And that's what I felt. I was like, if he's been carrying this injury for all these weeks, like that doesn't really make sense that you would play him and risk him in that sense. So, I mean, even the sickness, it's a bit of a gamble, but it seemed to be not a surprise when he came off. But anyways, M. Dempsey talking about overplaying midfielders. I mean, we just talked about how many minutes Connor's playing, Caicedo's playing a ton of minutes. Enzo finally got a rest. Now he's sick, so he's going to get more rest. But you know, it seems like the depth for midfield options is pretty light with these injuries and stuff. Like Lavia is still coming back. The last thing they said on him was in partial team training. Leslie's progressing.
He's not too far away.
Leslie's in reconditioning. But those are big misses.
I think the bigger issue actually with Enzo and Caicedo is the fact that when they play international football, they have to come back so late. And the international schedules of the South American teams are a lot more punishing than the European teams in terms of just travel, in terms of the competitive nature of a lot of the games, in terms of the way I think they're treated while they're over there, in terms of training and stuff. I don't think that this is a bit of a sweeping generalization, but I know it's true in some cases that some South American nations don't pay quite close attention to the club sort of medical advice in terms of how players should be training and not training. I think their issue probably lies more with having to play those international games and the travel and the lateness of coming back. In terms of the amount they're playing for Chelsea, look, I mean, Chelsea aren't playing that many games. Chelsea, in comparison to top teams, Chelsea are not playing a lot of games this season. They're in the Carabao and that's it. You know, they're getting a week between most games. Conor Gallagher will tell you he's absolutely fine playing what he's playing. No problem at all. And you can see that from the way he's playing. I think it's noticeable that Pochettino has done a little bit of rotation around Caicedo and Fernandez. And like I say, I think that's to do with their international workload and schedule, as well as what's going on at Chelsea. But look, I mean, they're playing, I know the Christmas schedule is different, but they're basically just playing once a week. They shouldn't have to really think too much about rotation and workload. I think Caicedo, part of his problem has been the interrupted pre-season that we talked about as well. I think you can really see in the last few weeks that he's now getting up to speed. You know, I know it was only Sheffield United, but I thought he had one of his best games against Sheffield United. I thought he played well last night, albeit one quite dodgy challenge on Anthony Gordon. But other than that, I thought he played very well. So he's coming up to speed, and I doubt whether he'll be looking to miss games. So, yeah, I think probably they don't have to think too much about that. I think Lavia, though, was signed with an eye on the fact that after international breaks, one of them will probably always have to be rested, because I don't think with their international travel and the fact that they get back so late from internationals, you know, the South American players often get back on a Friday before the weekend games from internationals. My team, Villa, have it with Emi Martinez, but it's fine. He's a goalkeeper. It's different. I don't think you can have two of your central midfielders arriving back on Friday and play them both, which is why part of the reason I felt they signed Lavia, because he would certainly really help them out in those scenarios. But we haven't got any internationals now for quite a long time.
Yeah, that is the nice part about it. Again, one game a week, match a week is very much the norm and should be manageable. But just with the lack of depth there, it's sometimes you get a little bit. It creates stresses in other parts of the team, right? With the defenders, not having them and just see. So we'll see. I appreciate you.
They can. I mean, they do have, even with Lavia out and Leslie out, they still have the ability, like Pochettino's done, to rotate one of them, because he can move around Gallagher and he can bring Palmer into the middle and he can work it like that a little bit. And then obviously, once one or both of Leslie and Lavia are back, then you really do have a quite a deep pool of central midfielders to choose from. All, my only complaint would be all very similar profile.
Yeah. All right. Dragon Leg says, can Nkunku live up to the sheer amount of hype that's been heaped upon him? How long do you think it will take him to get back to that crazy preseason form we saw him in?
Well, I think it will take him a couple of months to get up to that. But I've got a theory here. What I think is going to be really good for him is that he's coming back now. He's going to get minutes off the bench, you would imagine, to start with. I don't see him starting against Wolves yet. I think we're going to see him getting minutes off the bench. We might see a little start somewhere. And then you get that little break in January, and it's only a 2-week break. I think that's going to be great, because he's going to get some actual game time into his legs, be around games, and then get a little break where they can concentrate on the training and conditioning of him again, which makes me think that maybe February is when we will start to really see the real him. Pochettino was very careful after the Newcastle game. I asked him about Nkunku and said, surely just seeing him on the pitch and scoring one of the penalties is a huge boost. And he put me back in my box a little bit and kind of said, it is, but come on, we can't be putting too much expectation on this guy. It's really not. It's going to take a long time. And I actually thought against Newcastle, in terms of his general play when he came on, he looked rusty, and he's going to look rusty. And people need to be patient. And I do worry it's a little bit unfair, that some of the season has been pinned on them somewhat. But I've got to say, actually, the atmosphere in the Newcastle game last night was one of the better Stamford Bridge atmospheres for a long time. And he got an absolutely brilliant reception. I mean, he must have felt really loved. He's not been able to do anything for Chelsea yet. And I thought the Chelsea fans were fantastic, the way they responded to him coming on. He will feel, like I say, he will feel the love, and he will be even more determined to produce for them. And we've talked about it so many times. I'm so confident he's going to be a huge player. But like I say, my theory, and this might be an amateur Tim Pot theory, but my theory with this little January break is, after that little reconditioning period of having some minutes in his legs in the break, I'm looking forward to seeing him in February.
Yeah, he was so good in preseason. And to your point about Jackson earlier, like, Nkunku would have lightened that load, but he hasn't been able to. So it's been a massive miss. I don't know if you listen to the Naz pod, but Naz pretty much told me to my face that I was insane for thinking Nkunku was going to save the season. And I told him, I love you and I disagree, Naz. It's Nkunku or bust. Jay says, last pod, Matt made mention that some off-field / non-public turnover was still going on and that it was a general distraction to the club. The new ownership has been here for nearly 2 years. Is this work nearing completion, or is there a timeline of how much longer this will take? And is it really have an impact on the pitch? It's a 10-year contract. That's all we know.
The impact on the pitch is a very difficult one to quantify. Since we last spoke, I've learned of another departure of a very long-term employee who's going to be leaving, who again is someone in the background who it wouldn't be fair to name. And I promise these are real people. I'm not just making this up every time I come on. But the churn is going on. I'd heard of someone when I last came on. I've heard of someone else. I'm sure next time I come on, I'll have heard of someone else. There is a real churn of staff. The only way I think you can quantify whether it has any effect on the pitch is just, I think it's like any work environment. When a lot of people leave and when there's a constant revolving door, I think you can't help but a feeling of unsettlement does go through the place. And whilst it won't touch the players too heavily, it just doesn't help a settled environment and a settled culture. You know, we've talked a lot about these owners wanting to create a culture, and they're going to struggle to create any culture while the door keeps swinging round and round. Obviously, they're sort of big ticket. I think the big ticket backroom staff, in terms of the chief financial officer and everybody like that, I think that they would hope that their hires and their fires are done on that they've been through a churn of when they first came in, and then a secondary churn of people like Tom Glick leaving. And now I think in terms of those sort of big ticket business people and sort of behind the scenes people, I think they're getting towards the final pieces of that, if not got there. But under that, in terms of the day-to-day staff, there is still a big churn going on and a constant churn going on. And I do think until that calms down, it will still be quite hard to create a culture that runs right through the club, just because if everything keeps changing, everything, you know, everyone has to keep learning and keep coming in and finding new ways of doing things.
I agree. Interesting. All right. Well, I appreciate that. Those are all the Chelsea related. So we're going to fly through these last ones that are a little bit, you know, maybe more to you, Matt. And so we'll see how you handle these.
Dangerous.
Mr. Thurman says, if you were bringing 24 American high school students on a history of football class trip to London, where would you make sure to take them? Maybe a stadium tour, a museum, or something else. And there's a really good chance that Mr. Thurman might actually be doing this. So
I was about to say, am I planning this trip for them?
It sounded specific.
Wow, what a great question. There would be some places that I would say, look, I can't be on this pod and say that they shouldn't go to Stamford Bridge. They should absolutely go to Stamford Bridge. It is a historic stadium. It's got a lot of history to it. You know, learning about what that stadium looked like at one stage and what went through when the Ken Bates and buying the club for £1 and all that business. You know, there's a lot to just go out with Chelsea. But stepping outside Chelsea, what I would do is I would go over to Hackney Marshes. I don't know if you're aware of Hackney Marshes. It's a very famous place in London where basically on a Saturday and Sunday there's millions and millions of football matches going on. You know, just pitch after pitch after pitch. The pitches aren't always in great. You know, Hackney Marshes famously flood, and this is where, you know, traditionally a lot of very, very good footballers started on Hackney Marshes, and it's incredible what goes on there, the sheer volume of football that goes on there. So I would certainly get over to somewhere like Hackney Marshes, see what's going on there. I would also definitely go to one of the smaller clubs to learn about the Football League rather than just the Premier League. A club quite local to me or quite near where I live is Leyton Orient. They have a wonderful history, big history within the war as well, where a lot of their players had to stop playing to suddenly fight in the war and things like that. There's a lot to look at there and a lot to learn about football outside the Premier League there. And then, you know, look, some of the most iconic stadiums in clubs in terms of the Premier League clubs, and I probably don't need to go through them all. One place I probably wouldn't rush to is Wembley. The stadium itself, when you get in there, is nice, but, you know, they've just put up a lot of hotels and stuff around Wembley. It's quite a soulless place, unfortunately, now. So I probably wouldn't run to that. But yeah, other than the obvious stuff, get over to Hackney Marshes, get over to some of the smaller clubs, get over to some of the non-league as well, and really just see the culture of football and just how big football is in London. And it is much bigger than just Premier League. Believe me, the participation in it is incredible.
Our next trip, we're doing lower league, right? We've done Fulham Championship, but I mean, that's really not different. I mean, you want to be able to like go see the
Leyton Orient. We will sort it out. Leyton Orient is the place for you to go. It's like stepping back in time in a good way.
Brilliant. Not a Crystal Palace way.
Not a Crystal Palace way.
All right. Stutz says, would you rather have Sean McGinn or Enzo on your team right now, Matt?
What a question. I mean, I'm only going to answer one way, aren't I? John McGinn.
I knew it. I mean, but look at your situation. Why would you rattle it?
Why would I change at the moment? What I would say, and I've had to own up to this, is just before Unai came in, I'd lost belief in John McGinn. I'd started to believe that Villa needed to look past John McGinn, that John McGinn had got us so far and probably wasn't a guy to help us actually become an established top half Premier League club. And he's proved me horribly wrong. So yeah, I can't answer that any other way. John McGinn, no Villa fan would say anyone else.
Alex in Houston says, pick 3 albums to be stranded on a desert island with on an iPod with infinite battery. Interesting that we're doing iPod.
So I would start with the Stone Roses, I think. First album, just something I can always go back and listen to. I think I'd have to say, and a nod to your country, I think Nirvana would be in there. Nirvana, Nevermind, I can always listen to that. Or Nirvana, the live MTV album, the Unplugged MTV album is a phenomenal album that I can always go back to. Something a little bit more current at the moment. I'm kind of quite into I was very much into my sort of indie music, younger, and my grungy music. As I've got older, I've got quite into sort of the new sort of punkier scene. So something a little bit more current, maybe something by Idols. I need to say the Idols, they're not the Idols. Something by Idols. Yeah, I'd be quite happy with all of that. I'm not one who needs lots of different. I'm not a guy who needs a bit of classical music and needs a bit of jazz music. I know what I like, and I kind of stick to that sphere of what I like. So yeah,
I love it. I would be so bad at that question. Carlos says, meat pies or empanadas?
Meat pies all the way. And tip for you.
Okay.
Always, I eat a meat pie upside down if I'm having to eat it at a football match. So don't try and eat it with the top at the top.
Yeah.
Because it just gets horribly messy.
Gotcha.
Use the crust, which is more solid. Flip it from the base, eat from the bottom.
Gotcha. That makes sense. There you go. The top is thicker, more structurally sound.
Exactly. Turn it over and eat it the wrong way around if you're eating it with your hands. There's a piece of great advice for everybody.
So good. Well, he said the answer is always empanadas, but just wanted to check. So, whoops. Techie Tiger says, if Matt Law can make a law, what would the law be? Anything that annoys you the most that you would just ban?
Yes. The Chelsea Dugout Club.
Oh, yeah, because you have friends now sitting around you.
Well, friends.
By friends, I mean fans who've paid a lot of money to block your view.
Yeah. The Chelsea Dugout Club, the whole premise of the Chelsea Dugout Club is not for me, and I'm going to leave it at that so I don't get myself in trouble.
Understood. All right, last but certainly not least, Miglisi, putting you in a blender here. Would Matt rather Villa sign Mbappe or get refunded on all the alcohol you've ever bought?
We don't need Mbappe. We've got Ollie Watkins. I'm having my alcohol money back. I'd be a millionaire. I'd never have
life-changing.
To work again. Exactly. It really would be like my mortgage should be paid. I could quit my job. I could fly to Villa games in a helicopter if I wanted to. I'm having that money back. In fact, it might be enough money that I could even then buy Mbappe for Villa after that. So there you go.
I love it. We appreciate you, Matt. You've been so amazing for all these pods and things like that. So we just wanted to have a little bit fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Let's do that again sometime. That was fun.
For sure. Because look, we've gotten to hang out, in person, and you're a fun guy. So we thought we'd open this up to the people on Discord to throw out some questions, and they delivered. So again, if you want your voice heard on the next Matt Law Mailbag, join Discord. Check it out. But that's going to wrap us up. Get ready for the match preview at the weekend with CFC Central. Otherwise, until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.